Well, thanks for joining us again. You guys are loving the show, and that is warming our hearts because we're here just to share the ultimate biohack mineral analysis testing. And so, the last episode, hopefully you caught that one, we were talking all about HTMA and why more functional medicine doctors or practitioners don't use it in practice. And so I think Amber is going to start this one off because she's got some great ideas about why that might be happening. And then everybody else, dive in. Let's start the conversation.
Sure. So I think maybe some of us have had experience where we've gone to our doctor and unfortunately they were even a functional medicine doctor. They have heard of some of these theories that are years and years old that the tests are not valid and they're not across the board. You can't trust the validity. So I think that's one big thing. And the other thing is, I don't understand why anyone would not want to use an HTMA test. It is, all of us love functional labs, and I think they all have value and a place for being used in your healing protocol. But I think it's so much bang for your buck. It's a relatively inexpensive test and it's telling you so many different things. You can learn about psychological components, nervous system, minerals. We also are looking at blood sugar balancing, adrenals, digestion, so many important things. And I think most people just think, oh, it's a heavy metal test. We're going to see what heavy metals are present. But you also have to keep in mind, I think there's a lot of people that aren't trained in the nuance of HTMA. It's not a test that you can take at face value. There are some people that might see a high on a test and think, oh, you don't need that nutrient. Maybe you're taking too much magnesium. Your magnesium is really high off the charts.
Mm,
When you have some training, you'll know that, wow, you really need magnesium. And even if you're taking it, you need more because your body's under a lot of stress. That magnesium is not getting into the cells. So I think that's a big thing, just having the right training and the right practitioner that has great training how to read those mineral patterns.
Well, it can be a bit daunting at first when you see the test and like things are high, things are low, and it's like, what what does this mean, right? But then I think what we all experience is once you start figuring out what it does mean and how to interpret it, you're like, this is amazing, right? But it's certainly daunting to see all of these different things on there. There's so much. And I think it's about just realizing, understanding what data you're being given. And once you do make that realization, it's like a game changer.
I remember when I first did my first HTMA, it was after a period of running many other tests. And what I come back to all the time is how many of them give you actionable insights that you can do something about. I'd run other tests looking at my adrenals, my thyroid, etc. But it was only when I ran the HTMA and started to work on my minerals that I started to get the actual improvements that made me feel better. And that's not to say the other tests aren't valuable, but without HTMA, they are not as effective. And I think using it as a foundation and then bringing in other tests alongside is, in my practice now, much, much more practical. And I get much, much better results for my clients as well as what I did for myself. I mean, I was absolutely on the floor and was running out of ideas at the time. And it's that kind of the changes that you can make and pretty quickly. Like, yeah, it can take time to address patterns and to shift patterns, but that doesn't mean you have to wait to feel better. You can actually feel better pretty quickly just by getting the right minerals into your body. So yeah.
Yeah, that's what I noticed too with with clients and myself. The patterns might take quite a while to actually shift, but you're actually feeling better, like the energy is better. People, that's one of the biggest things that I find by doing the mineral balancing right away. There might be an energy shift, like I have so much more energy, I feel so much better. And maybe their test results are similar just a couple months later, but their body is actually utilizing. It's just such a it moves the needle. This is what moves the needle in all the testing. And I agree with Vanessa, like personally, I've done a lot of tests on myself because I worked in a wellness center. I did all functional blood labs, and I recently just did a Dutch test, which was very valuable. There's a lot of information that we can learn from all the different quantifiers, but for me and for working with clients, this is what has been just a game changer. It's like I said before, the compass that puts you moving in the right direction.
Do we
Yeah.
all agree that HTMA is the first test that should be run on any client for
Oh, hands
in your
down.
office for any reason?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we're functional medicine practitioners. We're after the root of the issue, the root of the symptoms. And so, we run all these tests that are beautiful and helpful and super insightful and necessary a lot of the times. Without the HTMA, we can't address the actual most fundamental root. But when you add the HTMA or you bring in the HTMA and bring in all the tests around it, now we have this big, beautiful, robust picture that we can really truly see some of the root causes, because our biochemistry, we have to address that. We see, okay, your gut's blown out and your hormones are a mess and your circadian rhythms like upside down and backwards. But fundamentally, the dysfunction goes all the way upstream to at the cellular level. And if we're not seeing that, then we're working in the periphery instead of in the center and then moving out. And so as root cause healers, I think that the root begins at the cellular level. And as we know, when our hormones are going wild and we can't function properly, the hormones it's not their fault. It's never their fault. That's just the result of the problem. So for the further we swim upstream, and I believe that the HTMA is definitely the game-changing secret weapon. It's the most fundamental. And for me, it's the first tool I reach for and the tool I never leave behind. There are a lot of tools that I use, a lot of functional lab words that I use that are helpful. But without the HTMA, there's always a super fundamental piece missing.
Well, and
What
that's why I
about-
always say, hey, it's the foundation of the house,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you've got cracks and the mortar's falling out of the, right, and you got holes, you're gonna have problems, right? So if we pack that back and make that foundation strong, then you can do some of the other things. Like I even talk about, like, I love peptides, right? So I love injectable peptides, oral peptides, but if your foundation isn't strong, those peptides don't work the same. I've even had people say, that they realized after they started mineral balancing that they needed less of a peptide or they needed to use it less because the results were actually better. And I 100% think that's true.
Or less of anything, really.
Yeah.
We have like the whole orchestra and all the cofactors and being brought to the table with, that's why these custom blends are so powerful. We end up needing less of the actual nutrients that we're providing and less of the things on the periphery that are like, kind of more targeting a certain thing. But yeah, just like with the peptides, another thing that we're always talking about that we are super interested in, that it's like, get your minerals in order first so that you can actually get your bang for your buck out of this, like methylene blue and all of those things.
What about a GI map? How many times have you guys looked at a GI map from another practitioner coming to you or that your client brought to you, and they have a lot of pathogens and dysbiotic bacteria and really poor digestive function? So you know that they've got low HCl. Okay, so they got those pathogens because they have that low HCl, and that's a line of defense for things coming in their body. What makes up stomach acid? That's really, really important to think about that. That is minerals. Minerals make up your stomach acid, and we get your HTMA test back and you've got no zinc, you've got no sodium, potassium, really low phosphorus, no cobalt. Like, we need to work on minerals, and if you don't, that GI map protocol is not going to take hold.
I feel like
Over and
people just
over
had
and
an
over.
aha moment,
Yeah.
right? They're watching this going, what?
Mhm.
Right, because that's usually what people start with is like you got to work on the gut
Absolutely.
first, and something that I'm always trying to portray to, you know, the practitioners I get the opportunity to mentor and then clients that I get to work with is we would never send our soldiers straight out to war. They go to boot camp. They get built up, they get strengthened, and that's what mineral balancing is. And then gut work and all of that would be war. So it's like, let's prepare our bodies to go to war because they're designed to fight this war and win, but they can't when their hands are tied. You know, all our soldiers' hands are tied behind their back and they have no weapons and they're exhausted and depleted and like just like worthless. So it's like, let's put some voltage back into these guys and then send them out into battle. And then they come back depleted for sure. You
We
know,
build them up
see
again.
someone, yeah, and so we bring them back in, you know. So even if it's just a few weeks before, it's still such a powerful first step, first line of defense to bring into the picture before we go and do the bigger, more challenging things at a you know, biochemical level.
Well, and it's cool too because you can see what your body is able to handle, or if it's done, if it has gone into battle, you can see the aftermath of the battle, and it's like, okay, now that we've detoxed copper, like metals, adrenals are tanked now, like now what, right? So it really is a nice roadmap to see, you know, at a particular point, particular stage in, you know, whatever you might be going through in life, like what do you need at that time, right?
Mhm.
So it's
Well,
pretty
and
valuable.
That's a good point
I-
too, because
yeah.
things change like prior to pregnancy, then after pregnancy, then,
Mhm.
you know, after a very stressful event in your life. And then, you know, maybe, so there's just that's where HTMA is so beautiful because you can repeat the test. It's inexpensive. It's the best way to, like, you're not going to want to get labs every other month, but you can do hair testing just to see where you're at. So anyway, that was a good point.
It's all on paper and it's so cool. You can,
I know.
like, if you, and I did it one day for one of my coworkers that was new and starting, and I laid all of mine out for 2 years, because this was part of the training that, you know, she was just taking the course, and I said, well, look, this is what it looks like over 2 years, and like this is going up here as a response to this, and like, right, like look at how the calcium is going up here, then the sodium, like sodium dropped, and then potassium, right? Like you can see it all happening and almost paint a picture of what someone's body, like what someone's experiencing and how they might be feeling, right? Like I know you mentioned that, Tara, like being like a mind reader, right? Last time, and it's cool to really to see all that laid out.
How validating is it when we present these tests to clients and to our other practitioners that we might be mentoring, and they feel so validated. Some of these clients never knew that, you know, it's not ADHD, it's not OCD, it's that you have a lot of copper and it's built
Right.
up.
Your child's not just born naughty.
Yeah.
Yep, with
Yeah.
anxiety. And I mean, and copper's even, many people don't realize that copper, and Carl Pfeiffer, I think, was the first one to talk about this, is completely intertwined in schizophrenia and bipolar, right? Like so many issues with mental illnesses are tied up with excess copper in the body. And that's a
Yeah.
huge problem, right? That's a whole other episode about
I think we
copper
need
and
another
mental
episode
illness.
on that.
I
100%.
agree, 100%,
Yeah.
100%. And I think touching on, just before we sign off, touching on, like, I know that a lot of people discount HTMA because they say that the results aren't reliable, but there's definitely differences between the labs, and that's what's so important.
Right.
And preparation. Make sure
Right.
that
For
you're
the
not
hair at the
a
lab.
sample on hair that was watched a week ago.
Yeah, I
Right.
think that there's been some bad studies that are based on you know, not consistent comparisons. So the validity, it's not really valid.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and that's one of the reasons too, I feel like a lot of us have kind of settled into trace elements, but trace elements measures 37 elements, which is great. They don't chemically wash the hair like other
Right.
companies, which can affect sodium, potassium, zinc, manganese. Like those are, and sodium, potassium, like how important are those? Remember we talked about the sodium to potassium ratio, how important that is, and then they're washing it away, and it's just like, oh my gosh. So that's super important. I mean, ARL is another great lab, right? Dr. Eck, Dr. Watt, but they only measure 20 elements. So there's a lot less on that particular test. But I mean, those labs follow kind of the same standard procedures, if you will. Yeah.
There's one study that used hair that was like the whole.
Yeah.
Right.
What's
So,
left
I mean,
when you
we
get
know
down
that
here?
we pull it from this, the closer to the scalp, the more valuable, the more right now it is.
Of course.
And we had a whole study done on someone that pulled hair, the whole
Yes,
entire
I
hair
was thinking
strand.
that.
Like, this is
Chopped it
from,
all
like,
up.
10 years ago.
Yeah, I heard about that. Someone chopped up like one long strand and sent pieces to different labs. Well, of course you're going to get different results.
Right.
that
It's
was
like,
back in
okay, this is
1985, yeah.
3 months, this is 6 months ago, this is 2 years ago, whatever. And it's just like, let's just dole them out to all the labs, compare them, and if they don't jive, then this is debunked. It's like,
This person does not understand how it
you're
works.
full of smart today.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that was back in 1985 that study came out. And again, that's what comes out, right, with regards to what people are finding online, which is unfortunate because, again, I think we've shared even here today just the changes that we personally have gone through, but then obviously some of our clients and the practitioners' clients that we mentor are pretty amazing. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed that episode, a deep dive into HTMA, why more functional medicine practitioners and doctors don't have it in their wheelhouse. And again, the interrelationships with all these minerals are so important and they build the foundation of health. So that's why we are here bringing you this message. So we'll hope to see you next time.